Hey, what's up guys, Benny here and welcome to another Apex Legends video where I'm going to be giving you all the tips that I've learnt over the past year to get better at Apex Legends and be the best player that I can possibly be. And because of that, I'd like to thank EA for sponsoring this video and giving me the opportunity to play with Isaac Wright, aka Bran Stark from Game of Thrones, who alongside Vikkstar and Stoddy, we gave a load of tips to help improve his game and win 6 games in a row, just like we're going to do for you in this video and make you a better Apex Legends player. So my first tip to become a better Apex Legends player is to master your legend. There's a reason you'll notice most pro players and content creators that you watch only play as a single legend. And that's because the more you play as a legend, the more comfortable you become with their abilities and how best to use them to help give yourself and your team the upper hand. For example, my friend Rich or iTemp is a Pathfinder main, and you can see in his videos that he's mastered Pathfinder's movement mechanics so that he can get the most out of Pathfinder and be a much better player, whether that's repositioning in a gunfight or how to travel the most distance with his grapple every single time. The end result means he'll more than likely come out on top and pick up the win. So choose which legend you want to play as. Some are better than others, especially in ranked play. Some of the best legends include Wraith, Lifeline, Pathfinder, Watson, and Gibraltar. So try one of those and see what works best for you if you're stuck on choosing a legend, but stick to them and master their abilities. This next tip is something that you'll see professional players do all the time, and most other players just don't think about it, and that's kill trade. And it's all about how you think about team fights, so stick with me. It's important to think of your team's and enemy team's health pool and damage output as a collective. If you down a player, you've taken out 200 health and 33% of their potential damage output, which gives you the upper hand in the fight. So a great habit to get into is swapping places with your teammates to become the damage focus while focusing on downing one opponent at a time. If your shields are broken, swap places with your teammate and let them try to finish off the opponent. At the very least, you want to kill trade. Your teammate downs one of them, your teammate gets downed, and then you down the enemy who down them, and so on. This normally leads to quite aggressive play and reduces the length of team fights overall, which is exactly what you want to improve in Apex Legends. The longer the fights go on, the more chance you have of being third-partied. My next tip for Apex Legends is something that a lot of players seem to have a problem with, and it's something you can take advantage of, and that's knowing when to disengage from a fight. There's no shame in going, we're in a bad position in this gunfight, so duck out and reposition so that you then get the upper hand. Most opponents will then decide to try and chase you, which means they'll play right into your hands. This tip is especially true with high mobility legends like Pathfinder, Octane, and Wraith, who can get away much easier compared to Gibraltar, for example. So if it looks like you're losing a fight, just get out of there, reposition, and then re-engage. My next tip for Apex Legends is all about loot priority. I've noticed a lot of players always grab loot and weapons that they just don't need. They'll either have their inventory filled with syringes or grenades and not have enough ammo or meds. This is something you definitely notice at the top of the game. Players only loot what they need, which helps save them time as they don't have to do inventory management and also the speed in which they can find the items that they need. So try and have a clear idea in your head of what weapons and equipment you would want in your ideal inventory. If you see a Mozambique, for example, there's almost 0 point even picking it up unless it's a last resort, because it'll delay you by a few seconds in either getting to a more powerful weapon and then having to do the inventory management of dropping out the shotgun ammo and swapping attachments and so on. A nice balanced inventory of shield batteries, grenades, and ammo is ideal. Try not to grab too much of one single thing, and also, importantly, evenly spread out your shield batteries and cells among your team. It's no good if one player has all the meds and your teammate just ends up not being able to help you in a fight later down the line because they just don't have any healing items, which means you're going to lose. So share your stuff. This next tip for Apex Legends is one that I definitely hope you do, or at least are going to start doing, and that is play the circle. Playing the circle not only gives you a better chance of winning the game, but it's also going to help you get a lot more kills. This is because players that rotate late will have no choice but to run directly at you. So if you spot an enemy team and the circle is about to close, get to the circle's edge and wait for the free kills that have no choice but to run right at you with zero cover. When playing the circle as well, look for what part of the map within the circle has the best positional advantage, such as high ground or buildings where you're going to be more likely to come out on top in a gunfight. It will just help you in the long run. This next tip for Apex Legends is one that I definitely want everyone to start doing, and that's to master your weapons. Now, at the very top of the game in Apex Legends, you'll notice players will only use a handful of weapons. They'll ignore the weapons that are less effective in the meta, but guns like the Wingman, which gives you faster mobility and can deal a ton of damage, are used by everyone at the top, but is definitely harder to use to get the most out of it. So you need to make sure that you're landing all your shots. So if you haven't used the Wingman much, for example, or guns like the R99, go into the firing range and just spend time using them against targets, practicing all types of scenarios that you would come across in the game. You can even do things like 1v1 a friend using the Wingman only, because all that time that you spend mastering those weapons is really going to pay off in game, because you're going to know how to control the gun's recoil, where exactly to aim at different ranges to get those headshots, bullet travel time, and so on. That extra time in the firing range practicing really does make all the difference. My next tip for Apex Legends is to make sure that you play your opponent, which means before you get into a fight, you need to make a quick assessment. What weapons do they have? What legend are they? So you can then play to their weaknesses and your strengths. If they have a Peacekeeper, for example, you're going to want to keep them at medium range and pepper them from a distance. This is something that takes practice and split-second decision-making, but is something every top player does. Gauge your opponent and the situation around you and give yourself that upper hand. Another thing you can do in Apex Legends before you even go into a game is make sure that you've got the best settings possible so you have an advantage over your opponents before you even go up against them. I did do a video in more detail on all my best settings for Apex Legends if you want to check that out, but spend a bit of time getting everything just right. If you're on PC, make sure to maximize your frame rate. 120 FPS is going to be much better than 60. If you're on console, also make sure to increase your field of view to around 96. It's a small thing, but it really does help. Another huge tip that's going to help you get better at Apex Legends ahead of Season 5 is learning to communicate better with your teammates. Simple things like saying when you've cracked an opponent's shield or downed an enemy can allow your teammates to know whether they should be a bit more aggressive or play cautiously. All these small details and tips really do stack up, and communication at the top level especially, from combining abilities to focusing targets, really does set the top teams apart. Another thing that's going to really help you up your game in certain situations is getting used to armor swapping at every opportunity. There are just times where you don't need to use a shield cell or battery and can just pick up fresh armor off an opponent's body or loot box, which is also far quicker and opponents won't always expect it. This is also far easier with the setting don't automatically close death box when damaged whilst looting, so make sure you've got that setting off or it's very hard to do whilst under gunfire. My next tip for Apex Legends is really combining a few of the others in this video, but don't give your opponent time to think. Be decisive and quick with your actions in a fight. If you're going to do an aggressive push, really commit to it with your team and end the fight quickly, because if you take too long, it gives other players the opportunity to come in and third-party your squad, which is incredibly difficult to survive against, especially against good players. But on the other hand, if you hear a big gunfight going on, try and get involved and third-party your opponents. It's some of the easiest kills you're ever going to pick up in Apex Legends, because opponents will already be weak from the fight, whether that's because they've used their shield batteries already, or quite simply not had the opportunity to heal quite yet. It's every player's nightmare in Apex Legends to get third-partied, so try to make sure that you do it yourself. Something else I really want to stress in Apex Legends is every fight you get into, you should always be looking at how you can get some kind of advantage on your opponents, whether that's getting the jump on them because you've pulled off a flank or having the high ground so you're harder to hit. This sounds simple, but most players just don't do it and end up getting caught out in a gunfight. Legends like Pathfinder are masters at always having positional advantage and can also help their team get into positions that others normally wouldn't be able to. So just have that in the back of your mind before starting a fight. And if the answer is no, you don't have an advantage, try and reposition so that you do. Once you're in a gunfight, something that's going to make you better is unpredictable movement. Too many players just stand fairly still and don't necessarily move from side to side quickly or throw in a slide or a jump to throw off their opponents. Unpredictable movement in a gunfight is something that will set you above your competition in Apex, especially when you combine that with using bits of cover such as rocks, so your opponent doesn't always have a clear view of you. If you need to practice your movement while shooting, try it out in the firing range. Then my final tip to help you get better at Apex Legends for Season 5 is pay attention to the sound, whether that's enemy footsteps, gunshots, or abilities, or even environmental sounds like a loot box or door opening. Having something like a headset to help you pinpoint the location of these audio cues is going to help give you a huge advantage, as you'll be able to find opponents easier and get that first shot off. The amount of times that I've heard someone coming up behind me has saved my life because of my headphones would shock you. But there we have it, 15 tips to help make you better for Apex Legends Season 5. Make sure to share your own tips down in the comments below and subscribe for more Apex Legends content in the future, and I'll see you next time.